Hello students, welcome to the e-learning program initiated by Shri Gyananjali Vidyapeeth for the students of Standard 8. Nice to see you once again in today's social science lecture for semester 1. This is going to be our second lecture for social science. The topic, as you can see on the board, the arrival of the Europeans. This topic we initiated in the last lecture, lecture number 1. We gained knowledge, we acquired knowledge about the ancient Indians who lived in India, that is the Aryans and their caste system. We also acknowledged ourselves about the rule of the Mughal Empire or the Mughals who came to our country and had the dominance over our country even before the arrival of the Europeans. In the last lecture, we came across the different European powers who came to our country and tried to have their settlements or their political powers in our country. Let's go through a quick recapitulation about what we learned in the last lecture and try to understand who were the Europeans that came to our country in a sequential manner. So we'll write about these European powers who came to our country on the board in a sequential manner. So note this down for your ready reference in future. Europeans who came to our country were in the following manner. First came the Portuguese in 1498. So if I just write this, Europeans who came to India in the sequential manner, sequence of an establishment of European companies. Sequence of establishments means they captured our places, our country, some portion of the land and had their political power. That's called establishment. Or they built their fort, their dwellings over there, or the colonization or the colonies over there. So sequence of an establishment of the European companies So first came the Portuguese people who established their establishment over here. So first we have the Portuguese. They came in the year 1498. Then came the other companies, that is the English East India Company in 1600. Came the Dutch East India Company. In the year 1602. Another one which is not given to in our text, that is the Danish East India Company. We will be reading a bit about the Danish East India Company with the help of the image soon. Danish East India Company. In the year 1660. Fifth company is the French East India Company that arrived in 1664. So this is how the different establishments came to our country and settled or had their settlements in our country. Well, about which we have learned a few in the last lecture. So let us quickly recapitulate what we learned and understood in the last lecture from the text. So right from page number 1, we acknowledged ourselves about the influence of our country on the other countries of the world. Our country being a rich country, a wealthy country, people were wanting to trade with us. That was the basic thing why the Europeans came to our country. That was the basic intention of the Europeans, because we were a wealthy country and we had a lot of commodities in our country, a lot of valuables in our countries, and they wanted to trade with us. That was the basic reason. Well, that is what we acknowledged ourselves about the reason why the Europeans came to our country. Followed by that, we understood about the need for the discovery of the sea route to India, isn't it? In the last lecture, we acknowledged ourselves that the land route was stopped because the Arabic people were jealous of the Portuguese and the other Europeans. They thought that they would be giving them a strong competition, and they were making wealth out of the by going to India via the Arabic land. So when the Europeans had to come to India, they used to travel from the lands of the Arab and then reach India via the land route. So we were already having a trade relationship between the European countries by the land route. But the land route was stopped by the Arabic people. They did not allow them to enter their territories or their land. And how could the Europeans reach to our place? But the commodities were in great demand. The spices, muslin, silk and many other things that the European people took to their land and sold it for very high rates over there. It was in great demand. So how could they stop that trade over there? The merchants who were dealing with such things. Therefore, it was inevitable, it was very important for them to find out some way to reach India, and therefore the Portuguese, as explained earlier, they started the maritime school, and the sailors ventured into the sea, and it was the first time ever that sea journey was taken up, and that is how the sea route to India was discovered. Well, we understood that Christopher Columbus tried to reach India, but unfortunately he reached America, and throughout his life till he lived, he thought that he had discovered India, but that was not India. Later on, it was the Portuguese sailor Vasco da Gama who got success in finding out a sea route to India, and therefore he reached India via the Cape of Good Hope, circumnavigating the Cape of Good Hope, and that is how he landed up in the port in Calicut on 22nd May 1498. Well, the then ruler Zamorin gave him permission to rule, and that is how the sea route which was discovered, by which the trade started again with the European countries. So that was the arrival of the Portuguese in 1498. We read from the text on page number 3 about the Dutch, how the Dutch came to our country after 100 years of the arrival of the Portuguese. So for 100 years Portuguese ruled over us, we can see, because gradually they had developed political powers also in our country. Initially when they came with the intention of just trading with us, but gradually they happened to capture some places in our country. As we learned earlier, we acknowledged ourselves earlier that in the 15th century the Portuguese people established a port in Calicut for the purpose of trading, but gradually Albuquerque, who marched northwards and tried to capture the different places, he happened to capture Cochin, Diu, Goa, Mumbai and the island of Sri Lanka. Well, the Dutch who arrived in India after 100 years of the arrival of the Portuguese. At the end of 16th century, we acknowledged that the Dutch of the Hollands, who are now called the Netherlands, they came for the trading purpose initially, but they established ports in our country, and they also acquired political powers. But they could not last for a long time because the Britishers had arrived by that time. As you just understood that in the year 1600, the Dutch East India Company came, followed by before that the English East India Company came. So because of the arrival of the English East India Company or the British East India Company, we can say, it was difficult for the Dutch people to survive in the country of India. Hence they gave a great tough competition and a fight to them. They had wars between them, and that is the reason why the Dutch could not survive in India for long time. So today we are going to learn about the British East India Company. For this we will be reading from our text on page number 3, the paragraph given to us about the British interest in India, followed by the additional information that we will take from the image that I will be showing you. So let's read together and understand. During the reign of Queen Elizabeth of England in the year 1600 CE, the British East India Company, the British established the East India Company. So it was in the year 1600 when Queen Elizabeth was in power. She was in rule. Reign means rule. When she was on the power, when she ruled over Britain. So during the reign of, so have a concentrative focus on the word reign, R-E-I-G-N reign. It is not R-E-I-N reign or R-E-I-N reign. So altogether there are 3 spellings of reign. The pronunciation is the same. All having 3 different meanings. R-E-I-G-N reign means rule. We know what is R-E-I-N rain, and R-E-I-N rain you learned earlier in a poem, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. That is the strap used or fastened around the horse's neck or around an animal to control it. So during the rule of Queen Elizabeth, so when she was in power, when she was the Queen of England in the year 1600, she gave the permission to start up a company called the East India Company. Now, whose company was this? This company belonged to the merchants who wanted to increase their wealth by undertaking trade with India. Just like today in India, if you want to trade with a foreign country, what happens? We need to take permission from the government, isn't it? We need to follow the norms, the rules and regulations that are set up for trade policies. Similarly, at that given point of time in 1600, when these merchants who used to deal with commodities, buying and selling of goods, which they used to buy from India and sell in England over there. So they had to go to India for the purpose of buying. Hence, these merchants who used to individually trade, they thought, why not start up a company and together trade? So it will be more beneficial to us. Therefore, this company belonged to merchants who wanted to increase their wealth by undertaking trade with India. So those merchants of England who were willing to trade with India got permission from the Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth, in the year 1600, and therefore the East India Company, the British East India Company, was established. Well, the first British ship arrived in India at the port of Surat in the year 1608. Now, why was this possible? Because the sea route was already discovered. People had come to know how to reach India. So, by the same sea route, the Britishers must have reached India. The first British ship arrived in India at the port of Surat in the year 1608. This was the first time a British ship had arrived in India for the purpose of trading and seeking permission from the Indian rulers. Captain W. Hawkins. Well, here only the initial is given W. W stands for William. So the whole name is William Hawkins. Note it down. It will be helpful to you. So the first ship arrived in India in Surat, on the port of Surat in 1608, and the captain of the ship, whose name was William Hawkins, the captain of the ship was the first British to set foot in India. So prior to this, no British had ever set his foot on the land of India. He was the first ever British to come to India or set his foot on in India. So that was the first British person who happened to land on India for the purpose of say trading. So before this, no British had ever come to It was the first British who had come. So in history, everybody will remember this. W. Hawkins or William Hawkins. He met Jahangir, the then ruler, just like when Portuguese came in 1498. The then ruler was Zamorin. So they sought permission, they acquired permission to trade from Zamorin. Similarly, when W. Hawkins reached India on the port of Surat in 1608, he met Jahangir, the then ruler of India, or the then ruler of Surat, we can say. But he did not give permission to trade. He denied, he refused. He did not allow the British captain William Hawkins to trade. Thereafter, naturally he must have returned, he must have gone back to England. Thereafter, Sir Thomas Roe or Roe arrived in India, who acquired the permission to establish a trading center in Surat. But later on, another captain who came to India. So when the first time the British came, for the very first time any British, that is W. Hawkins, who came to India, did not get the permission to rule from Jahangir. Later on, when Sir Thomas was also a British, he came, he arrived in India, who acquired the permission to establish a trading center. So he was allowed to set up a center over here. So a place would have been constructed where they would have been keeping their goods for further selling or for carrying from here to England. Later, Delhi went into the hands of Shah Jahan. So what happened? Who acquired the rule? Shah Jahan became the ruler. Earlier we saw that Jahangir was the ruler. Later on, Shah Jahan. So Shah Jahan gave the permission to British to carry out trade in Bengal. So not only this, Shah Jahan gave the permission to British people to carry out trade in Bengal. So this was a little information about the British interest in India. Well, this will not be sufficient for us to learn about the British Empire or how did the British started ruling in India. So have a look at the image being displayed on your screen, giving you more information about the British rule in India. The British East India Company, sometimes also called John Company, was a joint stock company established in 1600 as the company of merchants of London trading into the East Indies. William Hawkins stayed at the court of Jahangir from 1608 to 1611. The British company gained foothold in India in 1612 when the Mughal Emperor Jahangir granted the rights to establish a factory in Surat to Sir Thomas Roe. Well, initially when William Hawkins came, he was not given permission, but then later on when William Roe came in 1612, he was granted permission. So 1608 to 1611, William Hawkins stayed at the court of Jahangir. But unfortunately, he did not get permission. So finally, in 1612, William Roe came. Thomas Roe came to India. He acquired permission from Jahangir to rule. The Court of Directors was the supreme authority in framing policies for the company. Naturally, when trading is started, some policies are framed. So the Court of Directors, the people who must be sitting in the court of Jahangir, they were the supreme authority who framed the rules and regulations, the framing the policies for the company, how the company would be trading, on what basis they would be trading, what they would be trading in, what kind of benefits they would be getting, how would the Indians be benefiting from them, what kind of taxation policies would be there. So all such things were drafted by the Court of Directors, and they were the supreme authority framing the policies for the company. So see, permission was given, but with some rules and regulations, policies framed by the courtiers or the directors of the court. Well, initially when they came, they did not have any kind of, say, intentions to rule over the country. In the first 50 years of its arrival, the British East India Company had no interest in the development of the colonies. It preferred to engage in the trade only. So you see 1600 when the Britishers started the East India Company, and when they arrived in India, that is W. Hawkins 1608 and then 1612 when they got the permission from Jahangir to rule. For the first 50 years, they had no intentions. So we can say that up to 1650, there was no one who would be ruling over India, or any political powers they did not have in India. So they had no interest in framing colonization or creating their colonies over here, isn't it? They only came, took the commodities, went back to their country and traded over there. Well, the policy saw a change by 1650 when the power of the old guard British royalist merchants was broken. So people who had framed this British East India Company, the merchants, that is the old guard British royalist merchants, was broken. When this policy was broken in 1650, and a new class of merchants wrested control of the company. So the people who had acquired the power of ruling or running the company, that is the British East India Company, that was broken, and now a new set of people, new merchants, they wrested the power, they captured the control of the company. Now these were new people, therefore they had new intentions. Later they tried to establish the political power so that they can compel the Mughals to allow them a free hand in the trade and keep rival Europeans out. So for two reasons they had this intention. The new set of people, the new merchants who acquired the control over the British East India Company, they tried to defeat the Mughals in war, or later on they tried to establish the political power. Why did they do so? So that they can have a free hand. Now what does free hand mean over here? Free hand means they were supposed to pay taxes to the Mughals in order to trade over there. Taxes were levied on them. So whatever goods they used to buy from the Indian people, the Indian merchant, the Indian traders, they had to pay taxes to the rule over there, that is the ruler over there, whoever the ruler was. Say it was Shah Jahan, Jahangir, they had to pay taxes to them. So there was a taxation policy, and because of that a lot of tax they had to pay. So it was a burden on the British people when they used to buy or sell goods in their country. Therefore, in order to avoid this, in order to get a free hand, so that they had to pay no tax, isn't it? So if you are having a rule over a certain land, if the land is in your acquisition, then you don't have to pay any taxes because you are the ruler of that place. And therefore, they had the intention, they developed the intention later on, that if they defeat the Britishers, defeat the Mughal people, the Mughal emperors, then they would be acquiring dominance over the place, and they would be able to trade freely without giving any taxation to them. Second intention they had was to keep the rival Europeans out. So if they have dominance over the land, if they have political power and control over India or certain parts of India, then the other rival Europeans, say the French, the Dutch, whoever was still having their control over some parts of the countries of India, they could keep their rivals away from them, or they could create a threat in them, isn't it? Well, later they tried to establish political powers so that they can compel the Mughals to allow them a free hand in trade and keep the rival Europeans out. In 1686, hostilities between English and Mughal emperor broke out. Hostilities means war between them broke out. When English had declared war on emperor, English lost the war and apologized for the same. The English people had a war with the emperor of those times, the Mughal emperors. But unfortunately, they were not able to defeat them, and they had to apologize and say sorry to them. So, finally saying that they were not able to acquire political powers over India. Well, this was some more additional information about how the British East India Company tried to acquire powers in India by having wars with them. Well, that was one thing. The next thing that we have is the French rule that started in our country, or the French who came to our country. So let's read more about the French East India Company, about their trade in our country, how did they land up in India, when did they come to India, and how did they start trading, and did they try to acquire political powers. The French established the French East India Company in the year 1664 CE. So, in the 17th century, the British East India Company was already there, and along with that, the French East India Company also took entry into our country. They established factories in Surat, Machilipatnam, and Puducherry. The old name is Pondicherry. So, this is how the French East India Company or the French power gave a knock in India or set its foot in India, just like the Portuguese came, the Dutch came, and the British came. So the French also set up trading centers or established factories in Surat, Machilipatnam, and Puducherry. The head of the French company was Joseph Francois Dupleix. This is the name that you need to remember. Who was the head of the French company? Who had the desire to expand the European rural India. So you see here this man, Joseph Francois Dupleix, who had just come, say they had come for the trading purpose. Initially, each and every European power who came to India came with only one intention, that is to trade. But when they came to India, they realized that they should acquire political power, they should rule over India rather than just trading. Because they found a lot of potentials in India. They could earn a lot of wealth without paying any taxes to them. So instead of just simply trading and making money, they thought why not to acquire political powers. Therefore, they fought with the emperors over here. And as we know, our rulers who used to fight within themselves, they got entrapped in the different policies of the European people, and that is how they lost their land in the hands of the European people. Well, let's concentrate on this. The French company leader, that is Joseph Francois Dupleix, who had this desire, who had this wish in his heart to capture India and acquire political powers in our country. He wanted to expand the rule everywhere in India. With this desire, thus the French and the British stood in competition against each other. The same desire was in the heart of the British also. Even British wanted to acquire, capture almost the entire of India they wanted. Similarly, the French also wanted to have dominance over our country. They wanted to rule our country, expand their power everywhere in India. But it was not an easy task because India was ruled by different rulers at that time, isn't it? Well, so the British and the French, they were enemies of each other now because both had the similar intentions. Thus, the French and the British stood in competition against each other to become the strongest European company. So, it was a fight between the two to find out who was the strongest, who could acquire India. There were innumerable disputes and battles, and finally the British emerged as the winners. So, the British and the French had a lot of wars in India just to bring down each other so that they could have dominance over our country. So the British and the French fought amongst themselves for quite some time. Well, however, the French retained their control over the trading centers of Puducherry, Mahe and Chandranagar, despite of having a lot of wars, disputes between the French and the British. The British were not able to capture or conquer the entire of the regions of the French, whatever they had with them. The French had some regions captured, isn't it, in India? They had their control in many places. But they were not able to acquire all of them, despite of so many wars. There were some places, some trading centers which were still retained by the French, which the British could not capture. That is Puducherry, Mahe and Chandranagar. Well, have a look at the image being shown to you, giving you some point-wise information about the East India Company. The French East India Company, as we just read, was established in 1664. The French factory in India was established at Surat, another point to remember. The French company was created, financed and controlled by the state and it differed from the English company, which was a private commercial venture. As we learned that the British East India Company was started by few merchants, some traders in England, isn't it? By the permission of Queen Elizabeth, the then ruler of England. But unlike that, the French East India Company or the French company was created, it was made by, financed, the money was given for the travel expenses and other things and the ships and whatever required, and it was controlled by the state, and it differed from the English company. So it was a different scenario altogether. The East India Company was created by private people, but the French East India Company was made, financed and controlled by the government of France at that time. So it was the government of France who ruled or who had made this company. It was not like the private company that was made by the private people, which was a private commercial venture. Dupleix was an important French governor. We read the name Joseph Francois Dupleix, isn't it? Was an important French governor in India in 1742. Dupleix began the policy of extending territorial empire in India and started political occupations, leading to series of conflicts with English in the form of Carnatic Wars. Now there is a special name given to this war. The wars that took place between the French and the British are known as Carnatic Wars. Have a look at the spelling, Carnatic, Carnatic Wars. So in history, a special name is given to this called Carnatic War, the war between the French people and the British people that happened in the history. Battle at Vandivash against the East India Company in 1760 was the decisive battle for the French existence in India. So this was a particular war that decided whether the French would survive in India or not. That was the Vandivash against the battle at Vandivash, a place called Vandivash against the East India Company in 1760. So this particular battle that took place between the English people and the French people was a decisive one. Battle for the French and its existence in India, throughout which they lost almost all their possessions in India. So all that the French had in their control, whatever places they had, everything they lost to the hands of the British. So almost the French power came to an end. It came to a full stop. So that was a great decline of the French East India Company by losing most of their possessions, most of their properties that they had acquired, most of the land and political power that they had acquired in India to the hands of the Britishers. So remember this, the Vandivash, battle at Vandivash was a decisive war in 1760 which led to the decline of the French power. Although we learned in the passage that trading centers of Puducherry, Maya and Chandranagar were retained by the French people. Well, this was some additional information about the French and its decline. Next we have the British trade in Bengal. How did the British people start their trade in Bengal? What all happened has been given in this passage to us. The British first started their trade on the banks of the river Hooghly and established forts. So the first time when the British started trade, they started trade on the banks of the river Hooghly. Well, we know it's a famous river, isn't it? River Hooghly. So it was on the bank of the river Hooghly where they started or they established their trading centers or established their forts, when they lived over there and acquired the political powers to trade. In the year 1651 it happened. The forts were garrisoned for their protection of the factory and got permission from the Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb to trade without paying taxes against annual payments. This was the first time something unique had happened. Earlier in the policies, they were supposed to pay taxes probably on a regular basis whenever they used to trade, whenever they used to buy and sell goods. But some change happened. What was the change? The forts were garrisoned for their protection. So they were now fortified. They were made protective by cordoning them off, having a security for themselves. So they had weapons with them. So the Emperor Aurangzeb gave permission to the British people to guard their forts with weapons also. That was the difference that happened. The forts were garrisoned for their protection of the factory and got permission from the Mughal emperor to trade without paying taxes. That was one more thing that Aurangzeb gave permission. Aurangzeb gave permission to the British to trade without paying regular taxes that they may be paying for quite some time. Instead of that, they were allowed to pay just an annual tax. Hope you understand annual tax? Annual means yearly. So they were given permission to trade without paying taxes for the entire year, but just a lump sum tax they were supposed to pay. Whatever would have been the decision, whatever would be the mutual negotiation between them, a certain amount that in the entire year, no matter whatever you trade, whatever you earn, this fixed amount should be given to the Mughal Empire by the end of the year. Such kind of a negotiation happened between and a permission was given by Aurangzeb to the British to trade but without paying regular taxes and rather paying annual payment, yearly payment. Annual means yearly payment, once in a year. So that would be beneficial for the British, isn't it? They would be paying a lot of taxes in the entire year. And now what kind of a liberty was given by Aurangzeb? Not to pay taxes. So maybe they must have taken benefit of that. They must have traded more than what they would be trading in order to earn more wealth and just pay one lump sum amount, and it was beneficial for the, but remember this was a negative point for the Mughal emperor, isn't it? For Aurangzeb, when he's asking only for an annual payment, a little payment or a certain fixed amount of payment, it was very beneficial for the Britishers or for the merchants or the East India Company. Because they must be earning a lot, and what they would be paying, if they would be paying regular taxes, they would have to pay a lot of tax. But here what happened, they were going to pay a little tax or an annual payment. Well, so for the entire year, they were allowed not to pay any tax but still trade. You can see the image being shown to you over there in your text. Ships of the British and their forts. You can just go through how the scene would be at that time. On to the next page, you have images shown to you about India in 1797, India in 1840, and finally India in 1857. So three different maps being shown to you, where you can see the British rule and the local rule, two bullet points given to you over there. So you can see some portion of the country was only ruled, as you can see, the coastal regions of Madras over there, the Hyderabad over there, Benares and Calcutta over there. But in 1840, as you can observe in the picture over there in your text, you can see gradually they acquired their political powers over Delhi, Lucknow, Benares, Calcutta, then Mumbai, Goa, Mysore and Madras. So quite a few places they had acquired political powers gradually. They had started entering into the country. They had started capturing and conquering our country gradually. But by the time it was 1857, almost major portion of India was under the British rule, as you can see over there, isn't it? Most of the places were conquered by the Britishers. You can see Lahore was also captured by the Britishers. Lahore was part of India at that time. So here you can see the expansion of the British rule between 1757 and 1857. So that's the title that we are going to read in point number 1.5. As you can see, by the time the East India Company was in a race to earn money, more and more money, isn't it? They were in a race to earn more and more money by any means they wanted to earn, and for that they had acquired permission from Aurangzeb not to pay regular taxes, perhaps to pay only annual tax. That would be saving them from paying taxes, and they would be earning or retaining more money. So by this time, by the time 1757, East India Company was in a race to earn more and more money. As per the orders passed in Bengal, only the company availed the benefits of tax-free trading. So what was the order given? Only the East India Company was given the permission to trade with India by paying only the annual tax or tax-free trading. It was not allowed for individual merchants, those who used to come to India and trade. There were individual merchants also who were trading with India, but it was only the East India Company who was allowed to trade without paying taxes, perhaps only annual. However, many officers who were engaged in private trade, so those officers, the British officers who were involved in private trade also along with the trading estate, they also started taking benefit of this rule, that is to pay only annual tax, and they did not pay the taxes as well. This was something incorrect, isn't it? It was only the East India Company who was given the permission not to pay taxes or tax-free trade between India and East India Company. But some private traders also took benefit of this situation. As a result, what happened? The income generated by the tax collection in Bengal reduced, which in turn was opposed by the Nawab of Bengal. That time, the Nawab of Bengal opposed. He raised his voice. This is not fair. Only the British East India Company was given permission to trade like this without paying the taxes or tax-free trade. So this was being misused by the private traders. And therefore, the income that the Bengal was having was reduced. That came into the notice of the Nawab. Therefore, Murshid Quli Khan, who was the then Nawab of Bengal, raised his voice. This dispute kept on recurring even during the time of Alivardi Khan. So now, who is Alivardi Khan? He was the descendant of Murshid Quli Khan. So this dispute, this fight, this argument, this thing, that was not actually right, isn't it? The dispute was going on between Murshid Quli Khan, the Nawab of Bengal at that time, that it was wrong. The private traders should be paying taxes. It was recurring, it means it was still prolonged even after the descendant, after Murshid Quli Khan, who was the descendant, Alivardi Khan, who was the descendant of Murshid Quli Khan. So after Alivardi Khan, his son Sirajud-Dowla took charge. So during the time of Murshid Quli Khan, during the time of Alivardi Khan, still the problem was persistent that the British people or the individual private traders were also not paying taxes, and therefore the income that was generated by taxation was gradually reducing, which was a bad sign for the economy or for the working of the empire of the Mughal Empire or the empire of Bengal, isn't it? Therefore, this prolonged up to two rulers, that is Murshid Quli Khan's time and Alivardi Khan's time, which was still prolonged up to Sirajud-Dowla, who was the son of Alivardi Khan. Well, he got involved into a major battle with the British. Now, he could not withstand all this nuisance that was happening, that is not paying the taxes by the Britishers. Well, Alivardi Khan or Murshid Quli Khan did not get into any kind of warfare, physical power with them, but Sirajud-Dowla could not withstand these kind of tactics or tricks being played by the British people. Therefore, he got involved into a major battle with Britishers. So he took up a war with the Britishers. He challenged them and he fought with them. Well, it's now time to note down the homework. So for today's homework, you will be writing the short note about the French given to you on page 3 and the expansion of the British rule between 1757 and 1857, about which we read today. So note this down. hope you wrote it down. So complete the homework and submit it after the lecture. This is all for today's lecture. See you soon in the upcoming lecture with the rest of the things, that is the Battle of Plassey and about Siraj-ud-Dowlah, Battle of Buxar, and the necessary textual notes we will be discussing. Till then, take care, have a nice day, and goodbye.